Production funding for Behind the Headlines is made possible in part by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Shelby County Mayor Lee Harris tonight on Behind the Headlines. I'm Eric Barnes with the Daily Memphian. Thanks for joining us. I am joined tonight by Shelby County Mayor Lee Harris. Thanks for being here again.
Thanks for having me.
Along with Bill Dries, reporter with the Daily Memphian. We'll talk about a bunch of issues tonight. The status of the renovation, expansion, and overhaul of Region 1. I still call it the Med. We'll talk about the upcoming legislative session and many other things. But we'll start with crime, public safety, criminal justice. And let's start with your proposal that you've really advocated for. We at this table have talked a lot about crime, about policing with the city mayor's race last year. There was lots of talk about policing and C.J. Davis and former Mayor Strickland talking a lot about the revolving door at 201 Poplar. You've put a big emphasis on mental health and specifically mental health at the jail. Talk about your proposal and how that works with other parts of the disparate public safety system.
Well, we've been working with a lot of the stakeholders, including the sheriff and the district attorney's office. And in fact, this is the sheriff's idea that we expand access to more mental health for the folks that are detained at 201 Poplar, the Bailey Justice Center. There are about 2,000 detainees there right now. We know, based on all the national statistics, that about 2/3 of them at some point in their lives have had a mental health issue or mental health problem. We know based on our own local statistics that a lot of the folks that are in that facility languish in that facility for 300 days, a year, even as long as 500 days, because their cases can't be advanced until they're stable. And stabilization is about 14 days of stabilization before a case can be advanced.
Mental health stabilization.
Exactly. And so what we want to do is make sure that the sheriff has more tools at his disposal to stabilize folks that are in 201 Poplar. And so that means building a new facility. It's an inpatient mental health care facility where we will develop a curriculum administered and led by the sheriff and his personnel in appropriate cases, put some of those detainees in that facility so that they can be stabilized. It is a model that we see not often around the country. It's probably in about 5 or 6 places around the country. But the good news is one of the best examples of this is taking place right now in Nashville under the direction of the Davidson County Sheriff. And so that is moving along very well. As I said, it is quite the coordination because it takes the agreement of the specialty court judges, it takes the agreement of the district attorney's office, the sheriff's office, yours truly, and all the rest, and the county commissioners, of course. And so we've really seen a lot of buy-in from all those different groups, and so we're optimistic.
Some quick logistics. I think the county commission in December approved $2.5 million towards studying and maybe taking steps towards building this. It's estimated to be something like a $25 million construction project. And then what would the ongoing budget be, and about how many mental health professionals would be there staffing this entity?
So ultimately, if the current vision is brought to execution, we'll have about a 60-bed facility. We're currently estimating that the annual cost to operate the facility is about $3 million per year, above and beyond what we're currently spending on some of that law enforcement activity. The reality, though, is there's a great chance that we'll save money in the operation of this facility. And so right now it costs us about $100 a day or $37,000 a year to house a detainee in the current facility. To do the mental health care services that I talked about are at least 3 to 4 times as much per day. So that may seem like we're going up on the cost, but remember the program that I talked about is about a 14-day program. And so if you get people stabilized and take care of their cases after about 14 days, you actually save money in comparison to the folks that have to languish there for 300 days, a year, or 500 days. And so that's what we're really taking care of. And so ultimately, we could save money by building the facility and creating this extra tool.
A couple more from me and then I'll go to Bill. Yeah. Save money in the sense that you would get people to trial quicker?
Yeah, well.
Is that the math? Or break down that savings a little bit more.
Well, we would get those cases disposed of. So this is ultimately one type of diversion program. It's an early diversion program. So the agreement, so this is a team approach, and this is how Nashville do it. You have all the stakeholders in the room to decide which cases are appropriate for stabilization and diverting those individuals.
To people who listen and say, I'm sure there are critics who say two things. One, isn't this just being soft on accused criminals? And two, will this just get them out of jail faster? And it gets back to former Mayor Strickland's notion of the revolving door, people back out on the street, maybe not getting mental health treatment once they're out of the jail, and you're accelerating people getting back out there to reoffend.
Well,
to those critics, you would say what?
Well, part of the issue is the exit care. So once these individuals are eligible for the diversion program, you've got to make sure that they have the kind of housing, reentry services that they need to be productive members of our community again. The reality is, all these folks are going to get out, right? What's holding them back is the stabilization care, and so we've got to do something about that.
Okay, Bill.
And to be clear, they are in the custody of the Shelby County Sheriff's Department when they're at this facility. They're not just coming there voluntarily, right?
Exactly. And we hope that you can stabilize these individuals across 2 weeks. But if they can't be stabilized across 2 weeks, then they remain in custody until everyone is satisfied that they have been stabilized. A lot of these cases are access to prescriptions. They haven't been seen by a doctor. Their prescription has run out. There are problems like that that could be solved to stabilize these individuals and take care of those cases.
In one of the county commission discussions, I heard some commissioners, not all commissioners, but some commissioners saying, well, why don't we just incorporate this into a new criminal justice center?
Well, a criminal justice center will cost, upwards of $1 billion. And so I don't know if our criminal justice system has been as productive as all of us would like to make us feel comfortable as a community investing that level of resources in the system. And so I think we've got to show some ability to take care of more cases in our criminal justice system before the public will entrust us with that level of investment. And so I think this is the start of showing that we can take care of these cases. There's a long backlog of cases right now, and there are not enough trials. And obviously we hear all the commentary about that. And so this is one of the ways that we can take care of some of those problems and give the public the kind of confidence that it needs for us to invest $1 billion, upwards of $1 billion, for an entirely new jail and an entirely new court system.
Mm-hmm. Would you want the setting for these mental health services to be part of the Criminal Justice Center, or would it need to be separate from that?
So a lot of that can be answered by the siting decisions of where the new facility will be built. And so we're going to, we've got some money from the County Commission already, and so we're going to explore and really drill down on a couple of sites. But both of those sites are in alignment with whatever may come in future administrations. And so one site that we'll be looking at is downtown, right, adjacent to the current Criminal Justice Center, the Bailey Justice Center, 201 Poplar. And the other site we'll be looking at is adjacent to some of the sheriff's facilities out at our East or Shelby Farms location. So either one of those are fully in alignment with whatever may come in future administrations if there is a decision down the line to build a new complex. Remember, a new complex is, it's a 10-year project, right? A project of that size is a 10-year project from go, right? From the time you've identified the resources and start the process, you don't finish for another 10 years.
That would be a full $1 billion new jail criminal justice facility. That would be 10 years.
So the complex is offices, jails. Well, the complex is office, jail, and courtrooms.
Okay.
So I assume when people say a new facility, they're talking about a jail and courtrooms. And they may be talking about offices too. They're probably talking about all of it. Yeah. But either way, that is a large 10-year project, no matter how you cut it. And so that's highly, it's not going to happen on my watch. And it's probably not going to happen on the next mayor's watch. I'm not saying that they're not studies that can be done and the process can be started, but you just got to remember that's a 10-year project. And by the time we finish a project like that, guess what? It's time to rebuild the mental health facility because it will have aged out anyway.
Mm-hmm. We'll say, I think at the same meeting or around the same time frame that the County Commission approved the money we were just talking about to begin this mental health facility and begin looking at it. They also approved $2.3 million in funding for 21 full-time youth development specialists that would be part of the Memphis Shelby County Juvenile Court. And then also went ahead and approved $4.6 million for the full next year. I think you were very supportive of that. I think it was a 12-0 vote. Bill can correct me. Again, this notion of, we talk a lot about enforcement, more police, more cameras, more state highway patrol, but this is something else. And talk about why these kinds of programs and maybe other programs the county have going on can be effective or have been effective at reducing crime in Memphis?
Well, so this is an initiative of the juvenile court judge, Sugarman, but you're right, we are very supportive of his vision for the court system. And the investment that the county commission decided to make is one of the largest investments that we'll see in our juvenile court system for many, many years. So his complement is going to be dramatically increased by way of this investment. You talked about the number of new positions that he's able to afford. And he says, among other things, that this will allow him to have more contact with juveniles, right? That there is not enough follow-up, there's not enough contact with those juveniles to make sure that we know, where they are and whether or not they're still on the straight and narrow path. And so I think that's what he is trying to do. He's a new elected official. Him and Steve Mulroy came in with new visions in the last election cycle, and so we've done everything we can as an administration to support their vision. And Tariq Sugarman is obviously shooting for the stars, and that's good news for this community because we're going to see the largest expansion of his ability to impact the lives of youth that we've ever seen in the juvenile court for many years.
Oh, you mentioned Steve Mulroy, Shelby County District Attorney, a year into the job and is under tremendous pressure, right? I mean, there is a lot of talk about the upcoming legislative session of looking really hard, one, at how the DA operates, at even, there's been talk of people, of making it easier to recall or remove a DA. I mean, there's just huge pressure on him. There's been pressure from other parts of Jim Strickland was a big critic of Steve Mulroy and his approach to how people are sentenced and so on. You've been a friend, I think, and an ally. I think you campaigned with him a year ago when he was running. How do you think, he doesn't work for you? I always want to clarify, the county mayor is not the president, right? Everything doesn't flow down from that. You are a part of the county government, of the local government. But as a political ally and as someone who cares, been in politics a long time, how is Steve Mulroy doing, and is the criticism and pressure fair?
He's doing great. I think he's doing everything that he can from his domain to address all the concerns that are on his plate. Obviously, he's got a big plate. He's one of the chief law enforcement officials in town, and so that's the biggest issue we have right now. But he's doing an excellent job so far. He's convened most recently a crime summit, and that was probably the first time in a long time that all of us got in the room together. And obviously, it's hard to program next steps with such a large room and lots of diverse opinions, but we all got together and we all came out and were on one page, at least for those moments. And those are really important moments, and I think those have led to a lot of other kind of moments like that. One of the takeaways from his crime summit was an effort to make sure that we had a more robust violence intervention program here in Memphis and Shelby County. We've got a lot of violence interventionists or violence interrupters, and we have a lot of folks operating in that space. I think the name that comes up most often is Memphis Allies or Youth Villages. And so given that we've got multiple organizations operating in that space of violence interruption, how do you pull all those together? That was one of the follow-up components of his crime summit. And so we're doing that now. I mean, we just had a meeting at Le Bonheur, which also has a violence interruption program with District Attorney Mulroy and all the violence interruption operators to talk about how we're doing the follow-up when people are, either shot or a family member in their household is shot, and we know that they have a high propensity to be involved in another shooting very, very soon. How are we following up with them? How are we delivering care to them? How are we getting them back on as I said before, getting them back on the straight and narrow?
Bill.
Let's talk about Regional One Health. The County Commission was to get an update this week on how that's going, but that's been put off till next committee sessions. But during their discussion, there has been some concern that all of the money for the Regional One Health and the building of the two new high schools, one in Fraser and Cordova, may not be there, or that the dollar figures are tight on that. What can you tell us about that?
Well, we're committed to all of these projects. I'm committed to all of these projects, and we have to invest in these things that are going to make a difference in the lives of folks in Memphis and Shelby County. I know that sounds cliche, but you've got to remember that Regional One is our only public hospital, and that's where all of us will have to go if we're really in need of urgent medical care, because they have the kind of specialties in place that'll save our lives. And so I'm committed to that. Obviously, we proposed the plan that leased to $350 million over 5 years to get their construction started. And that money is there and already accounted for. We think that we can do even more if we have to. With respect to the two high schools, we have that long running problem of the Germantown namesake high schools and to whom they belonged and how to work out and negotiate that deal. And so that came together. Right? We had great superintendent and a great mayor in Germantown, and all of us sat in the room and worked that deal out. And part of that, as you said, is a new high school in Cordova. I think they call it the East Region High School. Mm-hmm. And so I'm fully committed to that project, and we've already allocated the resources for that project. If the costs balloon, because we realize, I realize we're in an inflationary environment. If those costs balloon, Shelby County government will be there to support our students and to support Memphis and Shelby County schools. There is no conflict. There's no better expense. There's no better priority than supporting our kids. And I've organized enough tours of school buildings, and some of you may have been on those tours and so forth, to show the mold, to show the leaky roofs, to show the inadequate facilities, the heating system's not working, the cooling system's not working. And so I'm fully committed to that. And so it is a ghost story. Nothing more than a ghost story to say that Shelby County government is not going to have the backs of the school system. We're going to have the back of the school system. We're still going to have the back of this school superintendent, because our visions are aligned. We want to see a new school in Cordova. We want to see a new school in Fraser, and we want to see schools everywhere. Right? We want to see schools everywhere. And so, I've got to watch the meter, of course, but I've got to watch the meter only because I want to keep this going, right? I want to keep this going. We just recently worked with Shelby County Schools to do the rugby field, right? To do the rugby field, which is something the school students told us that they wanted. They wanted more investment in non-traditional sports, and so great partner, Memphis Intercity Rugby, said, was ready with a shovel-ready project. And so we're going to build a rugby field to support students in the Memphis Shelby County school system that want to do non-traditional sports.
You proposed a $50 increase in the wheel tax to fund all of this, and through compromise that made it to $25. So you told the commission this is enough to get Regional 1 started, this is enough for the two high schools, but it's probably not enough for beyond that, right? It's right. And that still remains to be seen, but in the governor's upcoming budget, there will be the first of the funding for Regional 1 Health. Am I right on that?
Well, I'll leave the governor to propose his own budgets.
But that's the anticipation, though, that the state sees the local money is in there first, and then they come ahead with a commitment to it.
That's exactly right. We're hopeful that we're all in alignment. We just met with some of the congressional delegation, and the feedback from the congressional delegation in Washington was very hot on this topic. Everybody's very supportive of rebuilding the campus at Regional 1. We've met with the County Mayors Association from the entire state. They are unanimously, right? The county mayors across the entire state are unanimously in support of this project of rebuilding Regional 1. Everybody can see the dividends that will accrue to all of us from the construction project, but also the other part, which is a long-term partnership between UTL Science Center, which is our health and medical campus here in Memphis and Shelby County, a long-term partnership between them and Regional 1. We've got to have that partnership. It's the right time to do it. And so we'll see lots more in terms of research dollars flowing to Memphis and Shelby County and our ability to recruit and retain medical talent, in addition to, of course, all the things I've talked about any of us might need that health care when we least expect it.
And Eric, just to give folks an idea about the dollar figures involved here, it's about a $750 million project to rebuild Regional 1 Health, and the county funds are about $350 million of that, with state and federal coming along, and also Regional 1 and the University of Tennessee Health Science Center involved in some fundraising beyond that.
A quick question on that. Is there, and people have talked about this before, because Regional 1 does serve the region, including, as far as Missouri and certainly Arkansas and Mississippi, are those states, either whether it's through the federal connection or those states, going to be asked to fund any of it? Is that just a dead issue? Where does that stand?
So right now we're working with our federal delegation. So, that's the David Kustoffs and the Steve Cohens for West Tennessee, but also the other members of Congress have expressed some interest in trying to find out how they can support to make sure that we're getting resources, national resources, which of course come from all the states in order to invest in this project. So that's been the best way to navigate that and make sure that there are other players investing.
Well, let's stay with budget right now. We're going into budget season. I mean, I think you all approve your budget in the summer, but you'll put forward a budget soon, I believe, and begin that process. As you look, the county has gotten, like all counties and all cities and all municipalities across the country, got a lot of COVID money over from the federal government, relief for all kinds of purposes. That money, I believe, is run out, but that's my question to you. And the second thing is interest rates are not where they were. Government funding these projects is a lot more expensive than it was 5 years ago, even 3 years ago. So how do you look at those two issues, the interest rates and the expiration or the running out of the COVID money?
So you're right, it's not a great interest rate environment right now. We still have some COVID money left in Shelby County, and so that's somewhat good news, but we're really, really at the end of all the COVID or / stimulus money that accrued over the last, two years or so. And so trying to move forward without those resources is going to be really, really tricky. Shelby County has been pretty resource constrained. We haven't had a lot of, lift in terms of, some of our levers here. The only one we've had since I've been in office for the last, 5.5 years here is the motor vehicle registration fee. We did, get that increase. And so that has been very helpful because that money started rolling in and that money will roll in from now until forever. But it's going to be a tough budget season, and so we're gonna meet with the commissioners very soon. We've got in the next couple of weeks we're gonna have our first retreat with the commissioners, and so we're gonna lay out some of these challenges and try to get us all on the same page.
Bill, about 4 minutes left.
You've talked before about property taxes and how you feel like the will is not there to raise those taxes. That's why you proposed the motor vehicle or wheel tax hike. Do you see that has changed at all?
I don't think the will is there to do property taxes. You never know. I mean, I've done as best job as I can, trying to shift the arguments to try to make our political dialogue more focused on working individuals and, less on some of the other stuff. And so maybe the dialogue and maybe we're at a different place in this community and we're getting there. I don't know if we're quite there yet. I still think the property tax piece is probably still the third rail, and there's probably not a lot of folks on the county commission that will vote for a property tax increase. And so I think that's one of the reasons that you said that we didn't go for a property tax increase. I haven't gone for a property tax increase. I don't expect I will go for one. I don't think you'll see one in this budget because I just don't think the will is there.
Is there still a structural imbalance? That's a term that gets thrown around a lot at the budget retreats and during budget season. County government structural imbalance. Is that still there and define for people what is meant when people toss that term around?
Well, the imbalance would just be that we're spending more money than we take in. And so I think we're doing a great job of managing that at this point. I think that there's always a possibility of some deficit that needs to be resolved one way or another, but I think we're doing a pretty good job of managing that. I think the real thing to be cautious of and be watchful of as we go through this is just the one-off spending items. Some of those items can be really, really expensive, right? $1 million grant here, $1 million grant there can be costly, and so those can create issues if you don't have a funding source. So we're working hard. Like I said, we've got a retreat with the county commissioners coming up in the next couple of weeks. We know we've got a new Memphis City Council, and I think the message to all these folks is always the same: is you got to have a source for your idea, a source of funds, and it's got to be a real source, a hard resource. In other words, you would want to take money from something in order to fund something else. But there's no opportunity for the magic money where you don't find a real source.
Let's shift gears a little bit to Shelby County Clerk Wanda Halbert. She is under investigation, I think is the right term. Bill can correct me if I'm wrong, by the Hamilton County District Attorney General in order to have somebody outside the county. Shelby County Commissioner Mick Wright sent a 20-page letter of formal complaint that was partly and outlined a whole lot of problems he has seen in that office. That was partly because the district attorney's office said that no one, since they started their investigation in June, had filed any sort of complaint. So there's a commissioner doing that. I think other people are. Will your office, you've been critical of Wanda Halbert, I think is fair. Will your office formally submit something to this investigation that they should look at in terms of the behavior and the actions of the clerk?
I think the answer to that is I don't know. I think it's unlikely that I will, but I don't know.
Are you with just a minute? I mean, are you happy with the performance of the county clerk?
I think we're doing the tour of all the hits now at this point. No, I don't think anybody.
Right, it reflects poorly on county government broadly, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, there's few people who seem to be rising to defend her. Is it time for her to be removed?
I think it's time for us to figure out a solution, and it's hard to believe that the solution is Wanda Halbert as county clerk. It's hard to believe that that's among the solutions. I think one of the issues, I mean, there are a million issues, but I think one of the issues that probably bears more investigation is I don't think she signs anything. And I think that holds up everything. So no lease renewals, no accounting forms, nothing.
Yeah.
And so we can't finish our budget process. We can't finish our internal audit.
Right.
We can't renew any leases because she won't sign anything. Okay. And it's for fear of an investigation, which is happening.
Lastly,
So,
you have a good
weird.
relationship with Paul Young, the new city mayor?
I'm getting to know him. I'm getting to know him. And his sister obviously works for county government.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I
So you
love
know her.
working with her.
Yeah, okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for your time. We'll have you back soon. Thank you, Bill. That is all the time we have this week. If you missed any of the show, you can get the full episode at WKNO.org or go to YouTube and search for Behind the Headlines. Thanks very much. We'll see you next week.